Kia ora everyone. I wanted to share this presentation I gave at Toastmasters recently. It was quite interesting to discuss aspects of the flipped classroom to an audience who weren't from an educational background. It facilitated a lot of dialogue after the meeting, and I think the concept was really well received. I wanted to briefly discuss how technology was impacting the way we teach and learn in the classroom, and provide a way that I've embraced technology to build on student understanding and critical thought using the approach of flipped learning. The audience was mainly much older than I, so I introduced the term digital native and how students coming into education now are born into technology. We need to cater to students who are always connected and understand technology better than we could ever hope for. Before we get started, I want you to imagine a young boy sitting in a classroom. He's looking out the window and he's quite removed from the lesson that is taking place. Other students are active in learning, but he isn't. Instead, he's thinking about what he had for breakfast, who he's catching up with at lunch, and what work is going to be like this evening. This student was me. I was a disengaged learner that didn't really fit the traditional model of learning. I was bored, uninterested, and didn't really care about my future. School simply failed to engage me. For me, it got so bad that in my last year of high school, one of my teachers said to me, "Carl, are you ready for the game this Friday? If you want, why don't you head to the gym and get some shots up or have a workout?" As a 17-year-old kid, I loved this, but it only served to dumb down my education. Now I want you to think back to your education for a second. What were the defining characteristics? What were your lessons and your teachers like? I'm going to take a punt and guess that your lessons probably involved a lot of this: remembering and understanding. And you probably had a teacher at the front of the classroom that looked a little bit like this. If you remember Ferris Bueller's Day Off, you'll recall this teacher who would chalk and talk at the front of the classroom, monotone much like myself, while he disseminated information, hoping that somehow his students would digest, remember, and understand the information. For most of our students, this approach does not work. When I mentioned remembering and understanding, they are components of Bloom's Taxonomy. Bloom's Taxonomy is a framework that suggests a student's first exposure to knowledge and information occurs at the bottom of the pyramid through lecture and chalk and talk approaches to teaching. As students assimilate the knowledge and information, they move up the pyramid performing higher order cognitive tasks. One thing I love about technology is the need to remember and understand content is almost irrelevant. We have these amazing tools in our pocket that can pull out almost any sort of information at any time of the day. What we do need to be able to do, though, is use that information in meaningful ways. Where we learn to do that is in the upper end of Bloom's Taxonomy, where we create, evaluate, and analyze. This is where the magic happens. A traditional classroom, like you may have remembered back when you're at school, can consist of 4 different components. The first 15 minutes might be used to introduce the focus of the lesson or the learning objectives. Following this, you may talk about the relationship between prior learning and today's new content for 10 minutes. The next 30 to 40 minutes may involve the teacher standing at the front of the class delivering new content in a number of ways. Some of those methods may be exciting, others may just involve the teacher at the front chalking and talking. The last 10 minutes may provide enough time for the teachers to oversee a quick learning activity where they try to bring the lesson content all together. To top things off, we then send our students home and say, "Complete this homework task, but you won't have the help from your peers or myself or likely any other person." While there is nothing inherently wrong with this approach to teaching, it does present some obvious challenges. The most obvious is the lack of time spent on higher order tasks or activities that sit at the upper end of Bloom's Taxonomy. By default, the traditional approach lends well to applying, understanding, and remembering things. But we know that focusing on aspects such as creating, evaluating, and analyzing leads to more authentic learning experiences for our students and greater utility value. So is there another approach we could take? Well, there is, and it's called the flipped classroom. The flipped classroom takes learning and it flips it upside down. It removes direct instruction from the group learning space to the individual learning space where students can learn at their own pace in the intimacy of their own homes. This allows us to repurpose our classroom time and provide better face-to-face learning experiences for our students. This is usually done through a brief video covering key concepts that students watch at home. This is an example slide from a video my students watch that encouraged them to think critically around a number of ideologies we value in New Zealand. So the flipped classroom can look a little bit different to the traditional one. The first 15 to 25 minutes for me are really focused on student-led discussion, collaboration and questioning. This leaves us almost 35 minutes to focus on working at the upper end of Bloom's taxonomy, where they have my full support and the support of their peers to experience the learning in authentic and meaningful contexts. This opens up a number of student benefits, and I'll quickly describe 3 of them here. Relationships improve. Not just student-teacher relationships, as I'm removed from the front of the classroom, free to circulate and support my students, but student-student relationships improve as well. This approach to learning cannot work if students can't communicate and work together. The student-led discussion and collaboration helps facilitate this approach. Students are more engaged. They're no longer sitting there writing furiously. Instead, they're having fun while learning. And finally, because we've taken care of the remembering and understanding part, as educators, we can develop more authentic learning for our students. We are no longer bound to the physical classroom. Instead, we're much more free to explore real-world themes outside of the classroom, such as addressing issues within our community or hearing from subject-specific experts. I don't pretend to be the only one capable of providing knowledge and understanding for my students. So to wrap things up, what we've really done here, in a sense, is flipped Bloom's taxonomy upside down, allowing us, where practical to do so, to spend more of our face-to-face classroom time at the upper end of Bloom's taxonomy, where the real learning takes place. That's my simplified explanation of the flipped classroom, and I hope it's piqued your interest if this is That's my simplified explanation of the flipped classroom, and I hope it's piqued your interest if this is your first time hearing about it.